Welcome to the You're Not Crazy podcast, hosted by Jessica Knight, a certified life coach who specializes in healing from narcissistic and emotional abuse. This podcast is intended to help you identify manipulative and abusive behavior, set boundaries with yourself and others, and heal the relationship with yourself so you can learn to love in a healthy way. You can connect with Jessica and find additional resources, content, and coaching at emotionalabusecoach.com.
Hello, and as always, thank you for being here. Today, I want to dive into a topic that has been coming up on a lot of the calls that I have with my clients, and it's understanding the mindset of an abusive person and why they struggle to look at themselves. There are a lot of ways that abusive people refuse to take responsibility for their actions, even when they're clearly hurting the people that they claim to care about. And within this topic, I'm also going to touch on something that I know a lot of people are thinking about, and that's why can't you have a conversation about how you feel without them becoming defensive or dismissive? Let's first start by talking about why abusers struggle with self-reflection. An abusive person often has a deep fear of being perceived as a monster. So, in other words, they are avoiding and running from shame at all costs. And this fear can be rooted in childhood experiences or just driven from a distorted view of themselves. For example, I knew someone whose entire life was driven by the fear of being seen as the monster that they felt like when they were a child. But as an adult, it was still driven by that fear, even though they were doing things that made them into a monster. They spent so much time trying to prove that they weren't that person anymore, yet their behavior was monstrous. They would do things that, or react in ways that would be so outlandish for a particular situation, but all roads led back to, I don't want to feel like a monster. So no matter what, I'm going to tell you that I'm not. And so here's the thing. When that person crossed lines, when they hurt me, I couldn't even talk about it. The second I tried to express how I felt, they'd get defensive, denied what they did, or claim that they didn't intend any harm. And if you've been here for a while or listened to other episodes, you know this. I don't give a crap about what they intended. What mattered was the impact of their actions on me or on others. But to them, acknowledging that impact would have meant facing the fear of being that monster and actually having to do the work. And they just could not do that and would not do that. The defensiveness that we see isn't about a fear of being seen as bad. It's also about control. By denying or minimizing their actions, they keep the power dynamic tilted in their favor. An abuser's intentions are always about power and control. If they can keep you in a cycle of being confused and in self-doubt, which is the effects of gaslighting, you'll constantly just be second-guessing yourself. And you're much less likely to challenge them. So why does this happen? What does the abuser actually expect from you? I'm sure you have felt this way before, but that they're looking for a certain kind of reaction from you. They want your sympathy and your patience, your belief in them that they're trying their best, even when the best is hurting you, even when the best is not their best, even when you've seen them be their best, but they say they're doing their best. They want you to see them as the victim of their own behavior, to excuse the harm they cause because of their supposed suffering. And they'll spin a narrative that makes you feel like you're being unreasonable if you push back, almost like you're not understanding their pain or their struggle to treat you better. And it's such a tricky cycle because even if you start reading some things online about how to show up for somebody or how to handle partners' outbreaks in a relationship, you'll be encouraged to cater to their emotional needs and constantly reassure them and find ways to manage their mood swings. But I often say that the feedback or the advice for a quote-unquote healthy relationship does not work for an abusive one. because it leaves you walking on eggshells, afraid to speak up, and disconnected from your own needs and feelings. Because, and this is where it loops back to the monster complex, is if you take care of yourself in their eyes, you're seen as a monster because you're no longer accommodating or enabling their behavior. Now think about that for a second. The moment you prioritize your well-being, you're labeled as a problem. So if you set boundaries, you're labeled as a problem. If you choose to go out with your friend instead of caretaking their emotions, you're seen as a problem. If you want to go do something on your own, even though you really don't want to, say it's going to a concert by yourself because you need that release and to be just around other people, but you know they're going to fight or they have been kind of amping things up all day, you're seen as the problem. You're seen as a problem when you start to listen to yourself. And this twisted logic serves to keep you in line. This ensures that you continue to sacrifice your emotional health for the sake of keeping the peace. And so how do you break the cycle? It starts with recognizing what the patterns are and these tactics to keep you controlled and silenced. I know in a previous relationship for me, I would notice that when we had plans to do something, they would sabotage them, but then blame me for saying that I could never show up to them, which wasn't the truth. Now, I can't do that much. I'm a single parent. I cannot do as much as somebody that does not have a child can do. There are implications and also my own energy reserves. You know, if I stay focused on myself, my work, my child, the relationship naturally comes third. And that's probably where it should be, because that's what's healthy for me. Regardless, any time that we would have booked plans, so maybe this required money, in my case required a babysitter, there would be an issue. And I would notice it happen starting that morning. That morning, they would start amping things up, and it would be like these like little subtle things, or it would be constant reassurance of, I'm so happy, I'm so excited, I'm so this, I'm so that. And if I didn't respond to all of them, even if there was like 25 of them, and I'm not making up that number, I would be seen as not actually looking forward to it. When instead, the reality was, I committed to it, but I was getting through my day, whether that meant working, whether that meant getting a babysitter set up, whether that meant whatever it meant, you know, but you can start to look at these patterns. There's other ones too, that there would be these big emotional reactions if this person felt like I was giving them feedback that they didn't want, which was any feedback that wasn't completely positive. And so it ended up making me be silent about it and to explore what that was doing to me in my own therapy and my own coaching, rather than with the person. When you start to set these kinds of boundaries with yourself of, look, they're not going to hear me, you're not playing into their game. But I would look at your relationship and see what those patterns are, even if you can pull out 2 to 3, because that will help you set boundaries that even if they're not a boundary set with them, it will allow you to step back and say, my needs matter too, and you're not going to trample over them. And it's really hard, especially when you're somebody who tends to be in a caretaking space and that you have empathy. It could feel like you're not showing up for them, but I think you should ask yourself, are they showing up for me, or are they only showing up for me when it works for them? An abusive person doesn't want to face themselves because that would mean they're giving up all of the benefits that they have carved out in this relationship. They don't want you to see how well this system that they've set up works for them, because you'd stop feeling sorry for them. You would stop holding them accountable. Accountability is the last thing that they want. It is not your job, despite what they say, to fix someone who refuses to see their own reflection. And it's not your responsibility to cushion them from consequences of their actions. You deserve to be heard and respected and to have boundaries honored. Please, please don't let them convince you otherwise. And if you're in a situation where you feel trapped like someone else's behavior, there are resources and people out there who can help. I am someone that helps people work through this. but there's also a lot of others out there. If you need to find somebody that really resonates with you, they're there. And I really encourage you to look for them. As always, you can find me at Emotional Abuse Coach on Instagram, at emotionalabusecoach.com, and you can email me at jessica@jessicaknightcoaching.com. And if you need anything, always take some time for yourself to look through the resources and try and find the thing that resonates most with you. This is a hard space to start looking at the patterns, and you do need support.